All right, we're live. We're back. What's up, party people? My name is Sunny Ray. This is the Sunny Ray Show. I think this is interview number 4 or number 5 today. I've got a really interesting person joining me right now. His name is John Frankel. He's a founding partner at ffVC Venture Capital. He's a tech investor for over a quarter of a century. So let that one sink in. And I guess one of his topics, favorite topics is having kids, which is also happens to be one of my favorite topics. So John, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing well.
Good. Having kids, let's dive into the deep end. What's got you thinking about that?
Well, I excuse my voice, I have a little laryngitis here, but I guess where you stand on topics depends on where you sit. So I got married young, had a bunch of kids, and now have a bunch of grandkids. So we're sort of, north of 15 in terms of grandkids. And, I don't think my kids are done yet, but we'll find out. And, it really gets me to thinking about, at the societal level, what we're seeing, which is people just not having kids. Fertility is dropping, across societies, across the world. As you know, 2.1 kids per woman is the replacement rate for a society. In South Korea, I think the number's closer to 0.8. 0.8 means I think you drop over 100 years to about 4% of the people you have now. I mean, it's just, massive negative compounding. Your idea of a large Italian family with cousins and aunts and uncles is now, mother and father and son at the table, or daughter. It's just, completely contrary to all of our expectations from the past. And it gave me to thinking, why is this the case? And I think people drift through society. They once they're sexually active, they play the field, they eventually find someone, they eventually live together. They live together for years, and they eventually get engaged, have a long engagement, eventually get married, say, let's have a couple of years before we spoil things by having kids, and then they're infertile. Or if they're fertile, they only have capacity to have 1 or 2 kids. And, and if that's what people want, that's fine. But I think most people just drift. They don't come into their early 20s with a plan about what they want their 50s and 60s to look like. Having kids is tough. I always say the first 20 years are the toughest. And when do you want to do that? Do you want to do that when you have most energy in your 20s and 30s? Or least energy in your 40s and 50s, or 50s and 60s? And when you bring it forward earlier in your life, you may get to meet your grandkids. Maybe your great-grandkids. God forbid your great-great-grandkids. And it's the most fulfilling aspect of life. No one on their deathbed says, I wish I bought SpaceX in the private markets 10 years ago, 10 years before the IPO. They don't talk in those terms. They talk about their family and what's really important to them. And so, one of the things I really think people should do is think about it. Just have a plan. You can have your 2-year plan. You have your 5-year plan. Have your 40-year plan. Like, where do I want to be when I get to the end of my career? Where do I want to be? What are my life objectives? It's kind of funny. I used to, as each year went by, as I had kids, I would aggregate the number of years my kids are born to create a metric. So if you have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, the metric is 8 years.
Okay.
If you have a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old, the metric's 15 years.
Got it.
Your life metric could be
cool.
the aggregate of when you die, all of your kids, grandkids, and descendants. And that number is highly variable. across it. Now, some people may say they don't want to have kids, and that's fine. Everybody can, do what they want to do in life, but have a plan. Don't drift. And that's what's most important. And then the last thing, and I find this to be so many educated people make this really strange statement that children are expensive and they can't afford them. And I'm like, do you understand across the whole of humanity how wealthy you are versus anyone in the past? Literally, someone at the bottom 10% of society today is wealthier than someone in the top 1% 50 years ago. You have the sum of human knowledge in your pocket. You have access to PhD intelligence. You have people who run around and bring you food when you want it. You go out and buy, I don't even know how much, frappuccinos or whatever's are. That just was not how people spent their money. And so, you didn't have a television in every room. You maybe didn't, when I was growing up, we didn't have a television, and then we had a black and white television, and a few years later, we had a color television. And that was a luxury. Yeah, in fact, I think my grandfather bought it for my parents because it was a luxury, and they couldn't see that as something they wanted. Now you have a television in every room. You have it in your pocket. The access to media, traveling domestically, internationally, was a huge luxury. So people set their expectations. I want to live a very luxurious life relative to the whole of humanity. And on top of that, I want my kids to live that luxurious life. Yeah, it's difficult to afford. But if you actually understand where we are today, it's just crazy. There's so much envy in society. Today we've got the first trillionaire, and I think that's great. I mean, it's wonderful. The amount of wealth this guy has created for society is enormous, right? And people go, there shouldn't be trillionaires, shouldn't be billionaires. Why not? They create enormous wealth. You go to communist societies, and there aren't any, and everybody is brought down, not brought up. And, increasingly, it's becoming clear that the middle class is being hollowed out, not because we're becoming poorer, but because they're becoming richer. Yeah, we are in the most vibrant, economically successful environment for anyone who wants to work hard. And people can, really do well in society from all walks of life. And I just look at that and I go, you can't afford children? What's more important? When you're on your deathbed, I was able to have 10,000 frappuccinos, or I had an extra kid. I mean, seriously. So anyway, yeah, that's what's on my mind.
How many children do you have?
So we have 6, 5 biological, and 1 that we've kind of adopted. She's a wonderful girl.
Good for you. I love that. No, I mean, you're right though. There are a strikingly alarming, put the stats aside, just in my own personal circle, the number of good-looking, wealthy men like that I know that are all my friends that are single and haven't really settled down or haven't clamped down on that family side of the equation is quite alarming. And so something structurally seems to be broken. maybe Tinder's part of it. I don't know.
It's a real part of personal development. People weird, and as they get older, they get weirder. But if they have a partner, that acts as a check.
You get weird together? Kids, it's a check. Okay, gotcha.
That acts as a check. If they have kids, it's just a natural phase of maturation for people. And the ones that don't, it feels like they miss out on some of these stages. Again, my point is not everyone should have a massive family. If they want to, great. My point is plan what you want in life. Don't drift Don't just have a 2-year plan or a 5-year plan. Have your 40-year plan and use that as a way to structure a path for you so that every day, if you just take a step on that path, you're going in the right direction, as opposed to meandering and doing different things without any sense of, what you want to be when you grow up.
Yeah. So tech investor for quarter of a century. I don't know. What's that one lesson that hit me? I'm so curious.
That one lesson. Things take time. If you want to invest in something and make 100 times your money, 50 times your money, and do it more than once, it just takes time for money to compound. And it happens when you back real businesses that are making a real difference in society. So it's funny. I've been very skeptical of blockchain related investments. I guess there's more skepticism now because it's 15 years later and there aren't any blockchain companies. But putting that aside, and by the way, if when I first heard of Bitcoin, I put $100,000 into it, I'd be a multi-billionaire today. So, what do I know? But it doesn't create value. It actually enables some of the worst elements in society, which always troubles me. When over the years where I felt, well, maybe I should buy some, I was like, yeah, I really don't want to be enabling terrorists and pedophiles and all that kind of stuff.
Interesting. I built India's first Bitcoin exchange.
Sorry?
I built India's first Bitcoin exchange.
Well, the exchanges are different.
But you're right. That's the only business I would say that's probably sustained, the 13 years. But yeah, to your point, I think crypto at large has failed. I would argue I would never have thought back in 2012, 2013 that regardless of what we might think of the United States president becoming your advocate, I didn't think that was on the cards. I didn't think BlackRock and the Larry Finks of the world would take us seriously. I didn't think you'd have Michael Saylor. I mean, obviously on a downturn now, but catching waves. So I kind of feel like it's, I don't know, it's already proved itself to some extent. But you tell me. And SpaceX. Oh my God, I don't even know how much Bitcoin they're sitting on, right? So,
right, but there's two things you have to understand. Stable coins, which in the early days people felt were bullshit, are very useful to the US government. Through legislation, they've said if you're running a stable coin back to the US dollar, you need to be a US company, US regulated. And the US economy gets a lot of buoyancy from there being suitcases of dollar bills around the world. They love governments to buy dollars through treasuries, but they like individuals to buy dollars as well. So dollars in circulation is very important. Dollar-backed stable coins are a way of bypassing the Japanese government or the Chinese government or whatever, because if people buy dollar-backed stable coins, the back end of that is someone's buying treasuries and financing our economy. So that is the backbone of crypto for the US government. And the Bitcoin reserve stuff I don't really get. But
wait. So on that point, so I agree with you absolutely, and it benefits the US. But if you're a global citizen, if you live outside of the 300 million people, why would you want your life force, which some people consider to be money, to be able to be siphoned away by 5 people that sit in Washington, D.C. or whatever? Wouldn't you prefer a stable coin that was more akin to gold, where it was limited so that it couldn't be inflated away, so that you can actually, your purchasing power would go up over time and you could have more babies?
Well, to have more babies makes sense, but have you ever bought raw milk?
Yes. Yeah, but
And
in
on the
India,
side, on the
yeah.
side of the container, it goes, not for human consumption. And you look at it, you go, do I trust this? Do I not? What's the brand? So what happens is the dollar-backed, US regulated dollar stable coins have the same level of trust as dollar bills do. And if you're in Zimbabwe, you probably want to own dollar bills. Now, if the US government said we're going to do gold backed and you get all of the trust of the US government backing it, that's one thing. If Sonny and John set up a gold backed stable coin, well, maybe it's not stable, it's stable in gold terms, maybe you wouldn't trust Sonny and John the same way that you trust the US government. So, and that trust is what's worth an enormous amount.
What if I told you you didn't need to trust? What if that was the innovation of Bitcoin? What if the double spend problem, solving it without a middleman, without a Federal Reserve? Anyways, we'll leave this one for another one. I don't want. I don't. This is definitely not down my line of questioning. And by the way, I just started riffing just because you have this like beautiful energy, and you just brought up like some weird concepts like having kids, which happened to be my favorite topic. So I just kind of rolled with it. Yeah, I was going to ask you something. You studied, is it mathematics, philosophy, and logic at New College, Oxford, or?
So I was a naive 17-year-old.
Well, I was gonna ask you, what were you chasing back then? I mean, besides girls, and what did you think you'd become?
It's very, very simple. I could do math, and I didn't enjoy it, and I couldn't string two sentences together. I couldn't write. So I felt if I went to Oxford and I read mathematics and philosophy, I would have the math to fall back on, and I'd learn how to write and do structured thought. And then it turned out a third of my degree was logic, because at New College we had Michael Dummett, who was the Wickham Professor of Logic. When AJA resigned, Michael Dummett took over, and so I just it was like at my college, logic was a big thing, and so I got to spend time with logicians as well, and a lot of fun.
So math, philosophy, and logic is an unusual stack. Yeah, how does that training show up today when you sit across from a founder and have to make a decision in 45 minutes?
So, I mean, I think it compounds. So I went from Oxford to Arthur Andersen. I qualified as a chartered accountant. Now, I'm not a detail-oriented person, and it was a pain. I managed to qualify in 3 years, which is as fast as you can, and as Arthur Andersen for 4. But I have that accounting background behind me. I then went to join Goldman. I did about a dozen jobs in Goldman. The last job, which was for about 11 years, I was Goldman 21 years, was an equity research salesperson in New York covering hedge funds for US shares. So what's that mean? It meant I had to understand every industry that we had analysts in. So steel companies, how they work and how they don't. Biotech companies, retail, manufacturing, tech. And, within those, within retail, there are 5 or 6 subsectors. Within healthcare, there's 5 or 6 subsectors. And you come in the morning and you listen to various analysts on the news that would have happened. Like this morning, it would have been the aerospace analyst talking about how companies are going to trade around space. And you have to absorb all this information around all these different business models. You get in at about 7. By about 8:15, you're up on the desk, and you're now calling all of the analysts and portfolio managers at these hedge funds, telling them what's going to happen today and over time in these various stocks and ideas you have based on Goldman research. So you had to be able to synthesize all this information very fast and then communicate it out. So I think, the philosophy really helped on expression of ideas. The accounting math side on, the numbers side of the business. And so when I sit down with someone, they explain their business to me, I have this very rich tapestry of understanding of 50, 100 different business models that I can slot them in to understand where they are and what they should do. So it's really compounding. All the experiences that I happen to have all seem to some level separate and random, but in aggregate really were just phenomenal training for a venture capitalist.
You were building technology inside Goldman Sachs, before anyone used the word fintech, right? So what did you see coming from inside that machine that the outside world missed?
Well, before I got onto the desk, I was in an area called prime brokerage, and prime brokerage works with hedge funds where Goldman will lend them money or lend them securities they want assured against assets they have if Goldman keeps all the balances. So if you're a hedge fund, you have to custody your assets somewhere. If you custody them at Goldman will lend you money against your assets or lend you securities against your assets. But you have to reconcile what you think your assets are and what Goldman thinks. So in the mid-90s, I was re-engineering within prime brokerage, working with our technology team about building an application, a Windows application that would sit on the accountants' desks at the hedge funds to reconcile our positions with theirs. And I remember I went in to see this guy, Jacob Friedman. He was the chief technology strategist at Goldman Sachs. I went and he was running the project. And I went to see him and I said, Jacob, what if, we keep on having problems with viruses and configurations of people's PCs for our application. What if we ran the application on our servers and they upload their data to our servers and our servers get our data, and then they come through this thing called Mosaic and they could work in that and reconcile it, and then we don't have to worry about their desktop. And he looked very intensely at me. He said, and I don't have a voice for it today. We had a thick Ukrainian accent, but he went, John, this internet is a plaything for you. We're dealing with real business. So there was just no expectation, at that level and seniority within the firm that the internet was going to become important. And it was this sort of, scientific side project. So
That's crazy.
Through that and other things, I felt I had pretty good 5-year radar on how I felt things were going.
So was there a specific moment at Goldman when you knew that the institution could no longer contain what you wanted to do next?
I really enjoyed working on the sales and trading floor. I'd trip up the steps coming into work because you're dealing with some of the smartest people in the world. I'd call Druckenmiller and give him ideas. He doesn't need my ideas. He's got a team of 40 analysts. The guy's a multi-billionaire. Why is he picking up my phone? And so it really kept you very sharp around finding really good stuff. And you're only ever as good as your last idea, transaction, etc. So I love that. But I had started, in 99, I was up a lot. 99 was a crazy year in the market. So I was up tenfold. And I had some capital. And I started to put into private companies because it'd be less distracting being in the public markets. Public markets can swing up a lot, down a lot, and that's just distracting. And private markets, as a angel investor, offered more alpha and less beta, less correlation to public markets. And everything I did was correlated to public market. And I, in 08, I had a big exit. In 07, I had a big exit. And I was really thinking about, leaving the firm and but I was really enjoying what I was doing. So yeah, I pretty much reached the conclusion that probably my next stage was to go and run venture money. But, in addition, I was like the second oldest guy on the trading floor. So, you have to recognize Goldman is a firm run by young people. And so, it was becoming clear it was the right time for me.
So late 1999, you're still at Goldman. You start writing angel checks in the middle of the dot-com mania. Well, what pulled you in, and do you remember the first deal?
Yeah, the first deal was a company called Theater Mania, with technology for tickets for theaters. It exited 23 years later. But I made money. I think I made a 3% IRR on it. But what you were finding in late 99 was about 25% of the firm was focused on tech and telecom, which were considered to be the same combined sectors. And there were a lot of people who were leaving to go to startups. So my Rolodex, which was all Wall Street, started to have people in the startup community and the like. And so that just led natural exposure to opportunities. And some of the opportunities end up being very good. A colleague of mine who was on the desk said, I met this guy in the gym, and he's the CFO of this startup, which renamed itself, became Cornerstone On Demand, that went public in 2011. It was when they've subsequently, Vista Equity took them private, I think, in 2017 or 18. But, but a great company for sure. And so, yeah.
When did you realize that you were, actually good at this and not, just lucky?
Well, to be clear, I don't think you ever know if you're good at venture. It takes so damn long, and there's so much luck involved. I like to say that you only know if you're good by the time you retire, and then maybe not then. I've definitely had some good winners. I can tell you that half of our pre-seed funded companies get to a Series B. The industry average is about 10%. 13% of companies in our portfolio have gone on to become centaurs, or 100 million revenue run rate. So there's definitely some stuff that we're doing. I think the environment has got tougher as more and more people are focused on it. I also think venture is not a homogeneous industry, but heterogeneous. The larger your fund, the larger your check sizes, the later stage you need to come in. But to me, the early stage is just a lot of fun. And by the way, when you get it right, you get it very right. And most time, you get it wrong and get it very wrong. So give you an example of right. Another VC came to us and said, interesting company you might want to look at. We looked at and we led the seed round. It took us 4 to 6 months to get everything in order because the company had to do a recap to do that. We led around at a 6 million pre. And then now, the company's worth 5 billion plus. So, 6 million to 5 billion. Now there's dilution along the way, but we're up about, 100 times and more on our money, albeit on a mark basis. But if you can take 1 million and turn it into 100 million, no worse things in life.
So
And,
so
and,
as
and by the way,
yeah.
I think the company will, over the next few years, be worth 4 to 6 times what they are now. So you can take $1 million and turn it into 400, 600 million.
That's insane.
It takes time.
It takes time, yeah. So you've said that your, contrarian belief as an investor is that accounting matters. Coming from a chartered accountant turned VC, can you unpack that? Like what do most investors miss, and what has it saved you from?
So every investor wants to see GAAP accounting, generally accepted accounting principle accounting. It's what the audit is, etc. But accrued expenses don't make payroll. So you need cash accounting as well. And if you have 2 products, you need product line, contribution margin, cash accounting. You have a product that's doing well. You set a second product and you have 5 million of capital, say, for that second product. Should you pursue it or not? Well, if you have contribution margin, cash based, you can see it's going to cost you 10 million bucks to fund that to profitability, but you only have 5 million of cash. As your other business can generate the cash to fund it, you're going to go raise money. Can you do it instead of 10 million? Can you run it smaller and do it for 3 million? So that's one problem. Another one is you're growing fast and you have what's called negative working capital, where you get paid the money before you have to pay the expenses, right? There are various businesses like that where you get the revenue up front, but you have the expenses to pay over time. With negative working capital, when the growth slows, you suddenly run out of cash. Another example, you have a marketplace where you have to acquire consumers on one side and enterprise on the other. How do you work out what your cost of acquisition is and your lifetime value? You need to acquire both. And so we saw, 15 years ago, a lot of marketplaces. There was this company, I can't remember its name. There were a couple of them, I think, where you drive into Manhattan, someone would meet you somewhere and go and park your car at a cheap car park. And let's say they met you Midtown, then you wrap up downtown, you let them know where to meet you, and then meet you with your car there. Right? They didn't know the economics. It was all VC subsidized. And when you actually had the economics, the business didn't work when the subsidy went away because it was too expensive to acquire consumers and acquire garages to fund the operations. Yeah, I look at the huge VC subsidy today in AI and I go, we're not paying the true economic costs of tokens today. What will be the true economic costs of tokens in the future? Will they be lower because of technology or higher because of electricity costs? Right? And if you don't know that, the AI technology that's replacing an employee may actually be more expensive than having the employee.
So actually, I was going to ask you about that, right? So that was kind of the title that we rolled with here. Double click on that. So that's very counter to what I guess most people are saying and thinking, right? It's that AI will somehow lead to more job loss and there's fear and panic. So why do you think the opposite will happen?
So to be clear, I think there'll be more jobs created because of AI and not job destruction because of AI on a net basis. So, there are lots of ways to attack this. I talked about Jevons paradox for a long time. It's about a year ago. It came into public consciousness. But it's very simple. If you reduce the cost of something, demand goes up. I'll give you an example. 20 years ago, I would have told you there'll be chips in everything. Right? I'd say today, 20 years ago, I had a phone, a flip phone. Right? And I said, I will be walking around with, I don't know, a half dozen computers in my pocket. Why? I don't know why. Right? It's 20 years later. Computer. Right? I don't have a whoop. That could be a computer. This is a computer. My car key is a computer. Right? I got all these chips on me doing stuff. And I will tell you, in 20 years, less, you'll be walking around covered with AI. I don't know why my car key needs AI, but it'll have AI. Clearly, my phone has started to have AI, and the other chips I have started at the margin. But it'll be much more powerful AI, and it comes from lowering the cost of intelligence. So as you lower the cost of intelligence, you can apply it in more and more places. Now, there's some places where you go, well, why would I want a smart fridge? And we all laugh at that, right? Like, 30, 40 years ago, you'd laugh at having a navigation system in your car because it was a joke. Now we all have detailed navigation. In fact, in my car, because I got a Tesla last year, I don't even drive that much anymore. 96% of the driving is the car. And it follows its own map system, which is separate from the 3 different map systems I have in my phone. Right? So I have access to 4 different map systems. How crazy is that? You'd say, well, you only need one. Right? And it was a joke 30, 40 years ago of having any navigation in your car. So what happens is the cost approaches zero, or cost electricity in terms of intelligence. You just have so much more capability embedded in everything you do. So maybe the smart fridge is not one that tells me if I need to order milk. It's one that tells me how the fridge is running and if it needs preventive maintenance. I don't know. People will come up with solutions, and we can't necessarily see them today. Another example, radiologists. People, a decade ago said, don't go into radiology because we won't need radiologists in the future. The AI will read everything. Well, we have AI and we have a shortage of radiologists because demand is through the roof because the price has collapsed. And that's what happens. You just, I used this example before, that we are incredibly wealthy, even at our bottom 10% of society, versus 110 billion people that have ever been born. We just have access to things they couldn't dream of. And that is only going to continue to be the case. And so, these opportunities to have a simpler, richer life are just going to come along more and more for people. And I waver between whether I think that, basic income, government just giving everybody money, is the natural end of capitalism, or is ruinous for society. So I vacillate between two. I'm not sure.
So I believe you guys are raising your next fund. So it's aimed at American industrial resurgence, energy, manufacturing, infrastructure. I guess, why is this the decade that venture, finally goes industrial?
SpaceX IPO. That was I've always had the fascination for physical interaction from computers. I guess what you call physical AI. I've always thought that was fascinating, and I think that because of where we are in the development of AI and robotics and we're really on the cusp of this happening. And I'm a great believer that where there's great need, there'll be ingenuity. We don't have enough electricity generation, transmission, storage capability in this country. About a quarter of all electricity is wasted, and that's not just in transmission lines. And so there's a huge opportunity for AI to find the next chunk of capability of electricity from what's out there already. So I think there'll be a Cambrian explosion of startups trying to solve these kinds of problems. Yeah, Elon Musk's idea of putting data centers in space feels crazy, but he wants to put, I think, was it 100? I apologize if I get all the units and numbers wrong, but my recollection is he wants to get to 100 terawatts of power up there, and I think the US is somewhere between 4 to 5 terawatts for the whole country. So he wants to put in space the ability to capture and utilize, 20 to 25 times what we have for the whole country in space. There's a need for it. And if you buy there's a need for it, then you'll find a way. And that's not a team we want to bet against. In the same way in manufacturing, we need new ideas, innovation, and the like. And I think as we bring more manufacturing to the US, we will do that. It may not be a massive jobs program because we'll put a lot of automation in there, and the supply chain will look different and the end solutions will look slightly different, but they'll leverage the latest technology solutions. And I think, we have this great opportunity as really smart people are given these unbelievable tools to go and build. I mean, like I was a kid, here, I'm going to show you the state of the art intelligence that I had access to as a kid. Hold on one sec. Here it is. Do you know what this is?
Fancy ruler.
Yes. This is the back. This is the front. And this thing slides here. It's a slide rule. And this is how we built stuff before there were digital calculators. So, up to the age of 12, when I was 13, calculators first came out. We used these and log tables to literally do everything. And I mean, it's a marvelous piece. It's a marvelous piece of engineering, for sure. Now, people can build apps that sit on their phones using AI that they have. I mean, just the power. How many orders of magnitude is it that I can build an app, whether it's for a video game or to build a front end for a grocery store? First, the amount of energy I used to use this, 55 years ago.
Wow.
Right? This was the most powerful thing you had in your pocket then. And you know what you have now. And what's it going to be in 5 or 10 years? So I'm very constructive in the ability, if you put power in the hands of people. Oh, and by the way, everybody has access. It's not like the billionaire's phone has better AI than your phone or better internet than your phone. And so there's been a huge leveling, which means that people who have drive and intelligence are not necessarily held back by their circumstances. So it is just enormous capability we put in people's hands. Another way to think about it, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, please finish up.
Another way to think about it is when I was a kid, I don't know how many PhDs there were in the world. 1 million, right? And let's say 100 years ago, there were 10,000. And currently today, between individuals and AI, there's 100 million. And in a few years, there'll be hundreds of billions of PhDs. All of that intelligence is going to make our life better. It's going to open up materials that didn't exist before, medical solutions to extend people's lives, access to cheaper and cheaper energy. We're on the cusp of just phenomenal opportunity for society. And what spins out of all this will be jobs that you may not see today. It's easier to see the jobs destroyed. By the way, the Luddites, they could see the jobs destroyed. They couldn't see the jobs created. Right? When the car came out, you could see the jobs destroyed. You couldn't see the jobs created. Always the case. But it will create enormous opportunities for people to get ahead in the world. And I think it's such an exciting time to start restarting a company.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think I'm super, super pumped to be alive during this timeline, especially one where Elon's alive. So, you were backing applied AI, drones, and robotics. And by the way, I spent 8 years in that space prior to getting into Bitcoin. I worked for a Canadian company called Quanzer. But anyway, so you were backing companies well before the hype cycle, right? So where is real money being made in AI right now, and where are the tourists getting wrecked?
So of our 60 to 70 companies, I would say 60% or more are native AI. We don't just back AI companies. What we're actually seeing now, so where I think money is getting destroyed is people not price sensitive. You've really got, if you're going to pay 100 million pre or billion pre, it's going to be very difficult to make 100 times your money. So, in the early stage stuff, you've just got to be careful about your entry points. You also have to form a view as to where you think the value will be in 5 to 7 years. And, it's interesting. I think airlines have created enormous value for society. And over the life of airlines, they've net lost money. It's been a lousy investment. I mean, periods you could trade them, but they just don't make money. In the same way, I worry about these frontier model companies, how they're going to be able to capture profits and not be competed away. And I'm sure you've seen these models, the differential between them is narrowing. It's not dispersing, which in itself is intellectually fascinating. So the question is where the value is within it. For us, over the last couple of years, we've seen enormous value unlocked by our startups that have said, how do we run ourselves more efficiently? And they've really unlocked enormous value, which enables them to be more capital efficient, to grow faster. And I think there's an underlying arbitrage here, which is that large companies move slower. If you're a 400-person company, it's really tough to be AI first, but it's very doable. 4,000-person company, forget it. 40-person company, easier than 400. 4-person company, easier still. And so, we've just been working with our companies in the last couple of years to spread best practice, host webinars, talk about and get everybody thinking about some of the key things like, how do you measure AI productivity? If you create a leaderboard of how much you spend on AI, that's not the way to do it. But you should probably track employees and what they spend on AI. And the ones who spend a lot, work out if being hyper efficient or hyper inefficient. And the ones who spend nothing, probably encourage them to spend something. But, this ties into, and I'll throw in one last scene before I hand back to you for questioning and stuff. I've seen a lot of tech cycles, and this AI cycle reminds me of when spreadsheets first came out. So spreadsheets put in the hands of people who needed to manipulate numbers the ability to move from hand calcs to automated. Even more when you add in plugins for linear programming or expanding memory or other things that you could do to do enormous calculations that you couldn't do by hand, and brought in massive efficiency and enabled programs that otherwise would have to cost $1 to $5 million on the mainframe could be done in a couple of weeks of playing around with Lotus 1, 2, 3 macros, and then Excel macros when Excel started to dominate versus Lotus 1, 2, 3. The person doing the job was the person who understood. Their boss didn't understand. They didn't know what spreadsheet was. Their boss's boss didn't understand. CEO didn't understand. The person in the field doing the job with agency could take a day's worth of work and make it 15 minutes. And that's what happened time and again. In the same way with AI, for a lot of people, their boss doesn't really understand how to automate the job. Their boss's boss, their CEO, the person in the field does. And so small organizations that culturally encourage this are much easier doing a large organization where they'll be like, stop rocking the boat. You're making all of us look inefficient.
Yeah, that definitely resonates. So paint me the factory, paint me a picture of like kind of the factory floor in, let's say, 2031. Robots, AI, additive manufacturing. Like, what does Industry 4.0 actually look like when it works?
I think 3D printing or additive manufacturing has been very niche and almost a joke. Like everyone will have a 3D printer at home. It's like saying everyone will have their own kiln and pottery wheel at home, right?
Yeah, I've got one there, like collects dust mostly, but yeah, I agree.
So what I think happens is the way we are today is you want to manufacture something. You go and build a mold. The mold costs a lot of money. There's specialists that are in China. And then you can print off 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 from that mold once you get the mold right. I think in the new world, you just 3D print and stuff. And what that means is maybe if you want 10,000 of them or 100,000, you'll go the mold route. It may be more economical. But for shorter runs, just 3D printing it might be more efficient. It means you can do it here, not the other side of the world. No shipping costs. It means you get it immediately. But it also means that it opens up solutions you couldn't do before. So maybe in the old world, you would have 10,000 of one thing. In the new world, you might have 100 different things, 100 variants, each meeting a different niche, mass customization. And then the design work for this in the old world was CAD. In the new world, you just ask an AI to design something, you look and go, what the fuck is that? But it works better, right? So I think the application of AI and additive printing in 5 years is going to lead to completely different types of solutions than you had before. I think AI will allow us to use new materials haven't had before. I think I read something the other day about a structured AI design material that is stronger than steel and lighter than something that's very light. I don't know. lighter than aluminium, but stronger than steel. And that opens up a whole new series of applications. What if SpaceX rockets could weigh, a quarter of what they do and be stronger? Then you can get even larger rockets, even cheaper payloads. And that opens up a whole new. So I think when you've got tens and hundreds of millions of PhD intelligences looking at all the problems we have in the world. I happen to be on the board of NYU Tandon's Board of Overseers, and we had a board meeting earlier this week, and they brought in a mathematician who basically said AI has gone from being a joke in the last few months to solving unsolved problems over decades. And it is now becoming clear that we work with AI to solve problems, and we've actually reached a point where we don't have the capacity of mathematicians to digest the results. And humans think linearly, and AI's capability seems to be growing exponentially and not petered out. So what's that going to be like in 3 or 5 years or more? And it's not just mathematics, it's longevity science, biotech, material science. It's across everywhere. And then you bring in the creativity of humans on top of this, and you find enormous business opportunities in manufacturing, in energy, in healthcare. I actually wonder if you can live the next decade or so, whether you're going to be able to live, I don't want to say forever because that's a long time, but for effectively ever. The de-aging stuff we're looking at, I mean, today it was announced, I think, that Russia's investing $26 billion in longevity science, right? That's another whole arms race that's going to happen.
Have you ever heard of a guy named Aubrey de Grey, is it?
Yeah. He's
he gone now? I haven't heard of him recently, but he was one of the early guys. I remember. I mean, aside from Kurzweil and all this.
I'm sure he hasn't ironically passed away, but he was talking about it.
Yeah.
Lots of people talked about it, but China last year de-aged monkeys by 4 to 5 years. Like gray hair went to black hair. They looked across 60 organs. All the organs de-aged. No cancer. And by the way,
de-aged
4 to 5 years in monkeys is 15 to 20 years in humans. This is going to human trial. Within 10 years, you'll be able to dial your age. How old do you want to look? I think most people want to be in their 20s to 30s. By the way, destroys pensions, destroys life insurance, destroys the idea of work. I mean, a whole series of stuff that needs, if this actually works its way through. And again, I think this science will be economically available at a relatively low price. I mean, initially it may be the people who are funding the research, but rapidly the way to make real money here is to sell it to everybody. So, I mean, it's very difficult to look 5 years forward now, right? It was much easier 20, 25 years ago.
It gives you a whole new perspective on LTV.
Indeed. Well, here's a ridiculous thing. If people in their 60s and 70s can look like they're in their 20s, right?
Sign me
What's
up.
What's that do to your Tinder scene?
No, I believe this like in my core ever, like, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years ago. My body hasn't, but I still believe it. Hey, 18 years into ffVC, what does the next decade look like? Help me land the plane, right? For the firm, for venture as an asset class, and for John Frankel.
I'm a bit of a workaholic. I'll admit that. If you work at Arthur Andersen and Goldman Sachs and start your own business, you better be. So for me, I think I'm very privileged in my 60s to be able to have the intellectual engagement that I do, to work with some of the smartest people in the world trying to solve really crazy problems. And I love that. So I'll do this as long as I can. I think that venture itself is a weird space, particularly early stage. Late stage is very institutionalized. But early stage is still very bespoke. It's not a matter of running numbers for a spreadsheet. It's a matter of talking to people and understanding what they're doing. You know, we're investing in a company called Manna. We led the seed round 7 years ago. They do last mile drone delivery of food. Right?
Super cool.
Super cool today. Still early.
Mm.
You know, they just closed $50 million. They'll
Wow.
probably need to raise 20, 30 billion to deliver against their desires. And I think the business model will generate hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue over time. A massive, massive idea. They're in Ireland. Their headquarters is now in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And they have operations in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Tulsa today.
Are they human controlled or are they autonomous?
Autonomous.
Fully. Wow.
Yeah.
And they've gotten like clearance, I guess, from the governments to run this stuff. And
so 7 years ago, I sat down with Bobby, the CEO. One of my LPs said, "You got to talk to this guy. This is your kind of thing, John. It's a little wacky." And so he sits down and explains everything to me. And after about 40 minutes, I go, "Bobby, I got a problem." He goes, "What's your problem?" I go, "I don't know if you can build the drones. I don't know if the noise is going to be too much of a problem for consumers. I don't know if a consumer will adopt. I don't know if businesses will adopt. I don't know if you get regulatory approval. I don't know if you're going to end up falling out the sky and clip." You go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. You said there was one problem." I go, "Yeah, my problem is I think you can solve all of this." So we ended up backing him. We led the seed round. Yeah, the company is doing great. They've had hundreds of thousands of flights. They're in production. Their contribution margin positive. No one else in this space is making. Everybody's losing money on flight and trying to make it up on volume. They make a profit on every flight. So they got cost delivery. You know, so cost of terrestrial delivery is $8 to $12 if you put someone in a car or on a bike. For Manna, it's 4 going to 2 going to 1. Wow. And it's just unbelievable.
And they do this for Uber, or like how do they do it with like companies like Uber, or they have their own network, or what? How does it work?
They have agreements with the 5 largest global food delivery companies, so Uber Eats and Just Eat, etc. I think if they deliver against all of those, like $1.3 billion of revenue. So they have those multi-year agreements with them. But again, you got to go into a community, you got to get started, you got to do. There's all the logistics, but the regulatory stuff is clear. In Europe, they have beyond visual line of sight license, daytime, nighttime. They've had that for a couple of years. US, they're qualifying. The US regulatory is running behind, but it's catching up. And I got to tell you, it's a hell of a company. So even today, it feels a little early. 7 years ago was when we invested. So yes, we like to do things that we think.
I love that, John. John, my average live stream is about 20 minutes, but this we're at like an hour and 10. Just goes to show how interested I am in these topics. happy to, do a follow-up if appropriate and your schedule permits. This has been delightful. I learned a lot, and yeah, good on you. I mean, what an amazing thesis and conversation. So thank you, John, so much. Anything you want to share in parting here? Like, are you blogging? Is it LinkedIn where people can find you?
I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, but it doesn't get my attention. Most of my attention today is on X.
Got it.
Which
I tagged you right now. Okay, good.
Yeah. I really think it's become just a great platform to find out what's going on in the world, and to find specialists in areas that you care about. So yeah, that's where most of my attention is today. And
awesome.
Then if you go, if you go to ffVC.com, at the footer, you can sign up for our newsletter, which goes out twice a month. And we have about, I think, 25,000 people on there.
Good.
So we have a big community where we talk about, lots of stuff that's front of mind.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, John. This is delightful. Hang back for 1 minute, John. I'm going to bring this stream to an end. And thank you. Wow, we have quite a few people listening as well. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.